Have you ever had one of those days where everything feels loud? Your phone won't stop buzzing, your mind keeps jumping from one thought to another, and even when you finally get a quiet moment, you don't know what to do with it. Now imagine this, you have just 10 minutes, not an hour, not a perfect, peaceful morning routine, just 10 minutes with God. What would you do? Most people think they need the perfect setup to connect with God. A quiet room, the right words, the right mindset. And when they don't have that, they tell themselves, I'll do it later, when I'm more focused, when life slows down. But here's the psychological truth that might surprise you. Your brain doesn't need perfection to connect. It needs presence. And sometimes, 10 honest minutes can go deeper than an hour of distraction. So instead of asking, is 10 minutes enough? A better question might be, what happens inside you when you use those 10 minutes the right way? Let me show you. Picture this. You sit down, maybe on your bed, maybe in your car, maybe in between tasks. There's still noise around you. Your mind isn't fully calm. In fact, it might feel messy. And that's exactly where most people make their first mistake. They try to fix their thoughts before they come to God. But your mind doesn't work like a switch you can just turn off. It's more like a crowded room where everyone is talking at once. The more you try to silence it forcefully, the louder it becomes. Psychologists call this the ironic process of thought control. The harder you try not to think something, the more your brain holds onto it.so instead of waiting for silence. You bring the noise with you. You sit there and you start honestly. Not perfectly, honestly. You might say something simple like, God, my mind is all over the place right now, and something subtle begins to shift. Because what you're doing in that moment is not just prayer. It's emotional labeling. Research in neuroscience shows that when you put your feelings into words, you reduce activity in the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear and stress. In simple terms, naming what you feel starts calming what you feel.so your 10 minutes don't begin with control. They begin with awareness. And awareness is where real change starts. Now here's where it gets interesting. After you've acknowledged the chaos, your brain naturally looks for direction. It's like a GPS that's been recalibrated. But if you don't give it something meaningful to focus on, it will go back to worry, fear, and overthinking. This is why the next step matters more than people realize. You don't just talk. You shift your attention. Think about how often your mind replays problems, conversations, regrets, future scenarios that haven't even happened yet. Your brain is constantly running simulations trying to protect you. But what if, in those 10 minutes, you interrupted that pattern? Instead of replaying what's wrong, you gently guide your attention towards something bigger. Maybe you reflect on a simple truth, that you're not carrying your life alone. Maybe you remember a moment where things worked out when you thought they wouldn't. Maybe you just sit with the idea that there is a plan beyond what you can currently see. This isn't blind positivity. It's cognitive reframing. In psychology, reframing means changing the meaning you attach to a situation, which changes your emotional response to it. When you trust God, you're not denying reality. You're expanding it. You're telling your brain, there's more going on here than what I can immediately understand. And that one shift can turn anxiety into patience. Now you might be thinking, okay, but what if I don't feel anything? That's another common struggle. We've been conditioned to believe that every meaningful moment with God should feel powerful, emotional, even dramatic. But your brain doesn't always work like that. In fact, consistency matters more than intensity. Think about going to the gym. One intense workout won't change your body. But small, consistent effort rewires your muscles over time. The same principle applies to your mind and your faith. Those quiet, almost ordinary 10 minutes, they're doing something beneath the surface. They're building neural pathways associated with calm, trust, and stability. Over time, your brain starts associating turning to God with safety instead of stress. And that's when something deeper begins to happen. You start responding differently to life. Situations that used to trigger panic don't hit as hard. Thoughts that used to spiral lose momentum. Not because your life suddenly became easier, but because your internal world became stronger. And this brings us to one of the most overlooked parts of those 10 minutes. Listening. Not in a mystical, complicated way. Just being still. Because here's the thing. Your brain is constantly consuming input. Social media, conversations, noise, information. There's almost no space left for reflection. And without reflection, your mind stays reactive instead of intentional. When you pause, even for a minute, you create what psychologists call mental space. And in that space, clarity shows up. Sometimes it's a thought that feels different. Sometimes it's a realization about something you've been avoiding. Sometimes it's just a sense of calm that wasn't there before. You don't force it. You allow it. And maybe, in that stillness, you feel a quiet reminder that you don't have to figure everything out right now, that's not giving up, that's trust. Now imagine ending those 10 minutes with something simple but powerful. Gratitude, not forced gratitude. Real, specific gratitude. You think about one thing, just something small, something real. Maybe it's the fact that you made it through a difficult day. Maybe it's a person in your life. Maybe it's just the ability to pause and breathe. Gratitude does something fascinating to your brain. It shifts your focus from scarcity to sufficiency. Studies have shown that practicing gratitude regularly can increase dopamine and serotonin, the chemicals responsible for feeling good and staying emotionally balanced. In other words, gratitude rewires your brain to notice what's right instead of constantly scanning for what's wrong. And when you pair that with trust in God, you don't just feel better. You become more grounded. So now, those 10 minutes are almost over. Nothing dramatic happened, no lightning, no sudden life transformation. But something inside you is different. Your thoughts are a little quieter. Your chest feels a little lighter. Your perspective just slightly shifted. And that's the part most people miss. Change doesn't always feel big in the moment. But small shifts, repeated daily, create a completely different life. So the next time you find yourself thinking, I only have 10 minutes, don't underestimate it. Because those 10 minutes are not about doing everything perfectly. They're about showing up. Messy. Honest. Present. They're about training your mind to move from chaos to calm, from control to trust, from fear to faith. And over time, you'll start to notice something. You won't just need those 10 minutes when life feels overwhelming. You'll want them. Because they become the place where your mind resets, where your thoughts slow down, where you remember that you're not alone in all of this. So if this spoke to you, take a moment, not later, not tomorrow, but today. Give yourself those 10 minutes. And when you do, don't try to be perfect. Just be real. And if you're willing, write in the comments, just 10 minutes. Not as a rule, but as a reminder that sometimes the smallest moments of connection create the biggest changes within you.